go. We're recording now. I am here with Herb Sheaner, founder of the Jesuit Sheaner Relays. While ago, the head coach at Jesuit. So we'll touch on not only track, but as well World War II experiences. But first, Herb, give us your track background.
Well, in high school, I was just a little bitty type fellow and probably not much taller than 5 foot tall. My granddad was not 5 foot. He was 4 foot. And until I got into the Army, these were Depression days, of course, I grew up to what I am now. 5'7", 162 pounds. And I went out for football at the University of Texas my senior year, and they saw some speed and told Coach Littlefield, and he accepted me to run on the track team, and I made the track team. So that's I'd never put on a pair of track shoes before then, but I learned to love that sport and high school athletes, and I love football, but I love track and field.
So
now,
your first time running track was for Coach Littlefield?
Was at Coach Littlefield as a senior, and I didn't run track anywhere else. But I know that the track team had gone to Kansas. I was left, and there were 2 sprinters that had lettered the year before, and myself, who was new to track. We ran the 100-yard dash on Texas on the track at Texas Memorial Stadium, and I won first. So obviously I had some speed, and but it was late in developing. But I loved it. I loved dealing with high school kids, and fortunately I got that opportunity later on in life and coaching, and just enjoyed the heck out of it.
So how did you get into coaching?
Well, I met the head coach at a real estate office named Lank Smith. He was a football coach, and then on the side, you might say back in those days, he coached Jesuit track. He was a Notre Dame player and was the last one that was cut on the professional football team in Cleveland.
Okay.
Well, I met him, and his wife was going to have a baby, and he heard me talking about running at Texas University, and he asked me to come out to Jesuit if I would and coach his boys. And I'm delighted to. While his wife was having a baby, and that was in 1953, and he never showed back up. So I showed up again in 54, and by 55, I had one of the state's top sprinters by that time on the track team, and I think by then Lank Smith had left coaching and went into being a lawyer.
Okay.
It was just for men on the Jesuit they loved me and I loved them, and we just had a lot of fun.
So when did the Jesuit Sheaner Relays begin?
Well, they started when Father Tynan built the new high school with the monies that when they sold that old property over on where it is now, Inwood Road. And he told me he put that track in for me. I'm so pleased, of course, because we had a dirt. We had Carl Pellegrini, #1 in the nation in the discus before we moved over there. We had Schaefer, who later went to the colleges and meet and won first place 3 years in a row on the relays at East Texas State. and he put in a nice all-weather track, the first in Texas in 1964, on Inwood Road at the new Jesuit high school.
Mm-hmm.
And that first year, I had been a graduate of Texas and being on the team that ran in Texas relays, of course. I wanted something like that to run on the track. I invited TCU and SMU freshmen. They weren't allowed to run varsity that year.
Right.
And then I had high school athletes. And that from then on, it was very successful then on. After that, we were the only school that had an all-weather track, and that was, like I say, in 1964. It was rubberized.
Right.
Great track. People like to run on it. That's why I could get SMU and TCU over there run in the university division. And then I invited high schools, and that's the start of the Jesuit relays.
Well, now the Jesuit Sheaner relays is
yes,
recognized as one of the premier high school meets outside of something like a Texas or a Drake relays. I mean, it's one of the premier meets in our area, let alone some parts of the rest of the nation. So what are some of your memories? What are some of your fondest memories of the Jesuit Sheaner relays?
Well, the very first year, 1964, Mike Madigan, that was a Dallas Jesuit athlete that I coached, and these boys always wanted to excel, and they had a passion for track, just like I did. And this boy, Mike Madigan, jumped 24 feet, 4 inches. That beat the Southwest Conference distance in the long jump that same day, that Saturday. And SMU was out there with their athletes and the coach, assistant coaches, and he was offering a scholarship right then. And I think just 2 years later, a boy from South Furious, he was a top distance runner all time, really, in Texas, came up to Dallas Jesuit and ran our top boy in the TCIL. We were TCIL runners back then,
right,
Texas Catholic, not into the UIL like we are now. And we had this boy on the track, Robert Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And that was a big, got a lot of attention and a big thrill. And ever since then, it's just been a good meet. And here lately, of course, we're getting the state champions from DeSoto, and especially the girls, and the Lancaster boys, and the Lancaster, the DeSoto boys, state champions. And it's just one good athlete after another. And I know you've been associated with Bishop Lynch, and we had this girl that threw the discus and the shot, and we were happy to get her into the
Christina,
meet. Christina, and she went on to the Army. The Army Academy, right?
Correct.
Up in West Point.
Yes, sir.
And it's I'm always looking for good athletes and give them an opportunity to show off, and usually the papers cover this real well, and it just helped them. And the Baylor coach and other coaches would be at our meet and see these athletes perform. And it's been something I've really enjoyed, and the fans have enjoyed it. We've had some, the Super Goodwin. You remember Maurice Goodwin? Another good runner. He jumped also in a different class. He's also a 24-foot something jumper. But Madigan was in a different division, so they both hold the distance record out there at the Jesuit Sheaner meet. And then the boy that won the Olympics in the open quarter,
Jeremy
I
Warner.
think he was Arlington Lamar.
Yeah, Jeremy Warner.
Jeremy Warner. He took on the top sprinter in Texas, and he beat him in the sprints. But he ends up running 400 meters. He'd gone on to Baylor after that. And then I see another Olympian,
Michael Carter.
Oh, yeah, Michael Carter. He set records that stood for years and years until that good boy from the Woodlands came up through the shot put 1 inch further, I think, to break Michael Carter's shot put record. And Michael went to Rome and participated in the Olympics and won second there.
Yeah, that was Pippery a few years ago.
Yeah, that was back in Michael Carter. That was a few years ago, but he left Texas Relays on a Friday without putting all his shots, just so he could be fresher, I guess, to get into our meet that Saturday here in Dallas. And he showed up, and I remember it was sort of rainy a little bit, and not many people were there watching that discus and shot, but he and I were having fun out there. And he went crazy throwing it and set the 2 records. And they lasted until that Woodlands boy, and you know how good they've been over the years. It has to be somebody mighty good to set the records. And then still a team from Paris early on in the meet ran the mile relay in a fantastic time, 3:14. You know, that you don't see that often from the smaller school, but they still hold our meet records. And that boy, the top runner in that of the foursome went to Baylor, and Dion Miner, he ran at Baylor, and so it was just. And then there's a boy pole vaulter from Wichita Falls, and then it ends up to the boy from. From out in the where that set the record now. From where do you see from? Well, anyway, they good one good one after another, but we've had so many good athletes that it's just
no doubt, and there's plenty more to come.
Oh, yeah, it just. Like mentioned, the Falfurious boy, and we get teams from Austin, Texarkana, Amarillo, Corpus Christi, Jasper, just all over Texas coming to the meet. Oklahoma and Louisiana,
Oklahoma,
Missouri,
Louisiana, Kansas,
and Kansas. And 1 year we had 3 boys in the discus event throwing over 190 feet. If you just get one, you've got a star.
True.
And all 3 of them were state meet champions from Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. Well, the Kansas boy won, and he went on to Arizona State.
Okay.
So it's just that it was just always a very competitive meet, and we hope it continues to be. And we welcome the kids. I welcome the kids. It's a benefit for them and the coaches. I used to go to all the big meets when I was a coach. Look for the big meets. Went out to California, the All West meet. One of the boys, Elkins. Took him down to the indoor meet in Corpus Christi, in Houston, and he won that meet. He beat the boy, one of the best hurdlers in Texas, and that hurdler ends up the very next year winning a Southwest Conference. That was Elkins, Eric Elkins. He was a good one. I'd take him everywhere. I took Carl to San Antonio the same weekend. The WIL meet in Austin, and he threw the discus further than every single discus thrower in each of the different divisions So it was a pleasure. And he ends up at Oklahoma, and he won the Oklahoma championship. Mike Madigan, that we've mentioned before, went to SMU, won that Southwest Conference championship his freshman year, his second year in the long jump. Then he had an injury and didn't jump as well after he had a serious injury. He recovered, but he didn't jump as well. Yeah, we've had so many people, girls and boys, that I can't. That's just a few of them.
Oh yeah, and there's going to be a lot more to come. And Herb, I want to shift gears right now. I'm going to pull up a picture of your book. I'm going to pull that up right now if I can. This is your book right here, A Prisoner's Odyssey. It's right here in the middle of the screen.
Oh, yeah.
This is a book of your experiences in World War II. And for a lot of people that will listen to this, they don't realize your backstory. You were part of the 106th Infantry at the Battle of the Bulge.
Correct.
You were only 19 years of age in 1944. Correct. And then on December 21st, if I'm correct, in 1944, you and many others were actually captured. You were a POW behind German lines and at what's now the infamous Siegfried Line. And
That's correct.
You escaped. And can you share some of your experience?
Well, we went into a quiet area. The 28th Division was down to the south, and we held just to the north of them, about 27 miles. And there were 2-mile gaps, and there's a couple of divisions just above of the unit that was above us. That was a cavalry group. The Germans saw that was a weak area. It was weak. They had gaps that they could go through at night, and then nobody would ever know it. But we'd send a patrol every 4 hours into that gap. Well, that big attack then came with about 200,000 troops, and they had over 1,000 tanks. And there's some people couldn't get out of there, and we were surrounded, I think, the first day, according to my cook. So we were never ordered to retreat. We never, but the division below us retreated, and that was the 28th. They went into Bastogne, and 2 days after they attacked, the Germans were down below us about 20 miles to our south and north, and behind us, not below us, but behind us, that's just 20 miles, and that was where they shot up Americans in Malmedy. So we were way isolated, way up there in the front lines. And by the time, after 5 days, and we had no food. I understand we had one clip of ammunition. And we were we had no medical, just about what was left of us. The officers decided to surrender us. And what they were going to do, the Germans were going to use artillery on our dug-in positions. And we wouldn't have shot or killed a single German, but artillery during World War II killed more infantrymen than rifle bullets did, is what I've been told. So we would have been just setting ducks out there. And they rightfully, I think, surrendered us. I know we didn't like that. My captain didn't like that, but we did. And that Yeah, that began a long march back into Germany. The reason we marched in, we were put in a boxcar, and we got strafed, and a fellow 2 seats next to me in this boxcar was hit, along with quite a few others. And they were evacuated, and the rest of everybody else made a big POW in the snow and notify that airplane that we're Americans down there, and that the airplane waved its wings and went on. But everything that moved in the railroad lines was being shot up by the Allies and the Americans. That was a British plane. So we walked nearly 100 miles back to the Rhine River, where they weren't using aircraft on the Germans at that time, on the ground troops. It put in boxcars again, and from Christmas to got there New Year's Day, and we haven't had a bite to eat. So we were a hardy bunch, but good, strong, young infantry guys can go for a week or more, or 2 weeks without even eating. But we did have a D-bars, and that's about it. But by the time we got back to the prison camp, we felt like near skeletons, and it was that way until we were liberated back in April of 1945. And we marched away from. I was with a group that was out digging ditches and farmlands, and that's every day, Sunday, Monday, Saturday, every day. No news, knew nothing what was going on in the war in the world. But I did hear something that sounded like booming, and it was American artillery. It had to be, because the Germans shortly after that got us from around a bomb crater that we were filling in, and we were marched us off towards Leipzig. And we didn't know why we didn't go into Leipzig, but we were told, later I found out, the 69th Infantry Division was fighting the Germans in the city, so we had to detour and go up north towards Berlin, and we crossed the river and at Ellenberg. And by nightfall, we were in a makeshift fenced area in the forest. Put my coat down like I had one other time, and before I turned around to get it, somebody took it, and that also had all my savings in my Red Cross food in it, and that really just made me mad. So I told my buddy, we're going to get out of here, because I saw that the German guard at the gate was letting out these foreigners to go out and get wood to cook their meals. And I went out to the gate and told we couldn't speak German. He couldn't understand English, but by hands and voice, I let him know we need some firewood to cook our meal. Mm-hmm. And he let us go outside, and instead of getting firewood, we just kept going. And about 4 or 5 days later, we met an infantry patrol of the 69th Infantry Division, and that they put us on their Jeep. They didn't even know us. They drove right down the road while we were on the intersection of a farm road. And finally, the last Jeep turned around, and the sergeant says, "Captain, I told you they were Americans." But we were so excited, we couldn't even say we're Americans. We thought they were going to recognize us and stop. But we were the same clothes we had in December, the same dirty, filthy-looking clothes that we were liberated in April. So you can imagine we looked pretty trampy, all right, and no washing or anything like that. It was great to be headed back home. And that
So
was just the start.
the escape was actually through deception.
Well, yes, yeah. The escape, yeah. Uh, I think the war was pretty close to the end, and I didn't realize that maybe the Germans weren't anything like they were early on during the war, and maybe maybe not. But anyway, yeah, they didn't. Nobody came running after us, and the day that I escaped, I walked up to a German house. I'd done that when I was before while I was working, and knocked on the door to trade my bread for some bread, loaf of bread, no cigarettes for some bread. Well, the German woman brought back a whole round loaf of bread, and I gave her my cigarettes, and then I'd sneak back into where I was digging, and nobody would catch me. And the only trouble when I got back is a boy about twice my size, and I looked like he would steal my bread, and I nearly got in a fight with him. And I was desperate. I was going to use my shovel on him. Don't you touch that bread, you know. We were desperate, you know. There was a lot of stealing going on by there was a small group of 100 of us, but there was 95 of us we did not steal, but there was a few that would steal every night, and then I think that might have been one of them. But about after my escape, a couple of nights after, when I went to this second, I tried that again. Well, they called the mayor of the little town, and he came up, and I said, we're caught now. So he took us to the mayor. I mean, the mayor took us down into this little village, and he took us to a hotel, and a big German guy, and about a foot or so taller than me and healthy looking. He looked us over. He asked if we were Americanos, and I nodded my head yes. I'm glad they weren't SS troops, and because they might not want to fool with us, just take us behind the hotel there and just shoot us. But he let the mayor go with us, and he put us in a haystack down in the middle of this little town, and there we were. And about midnight, some tanks came into town, and they were a bunch of German kids drumming, had voices, had not changed, and they were hollering and brown, and I told Frank, my buddy, we better leave from here, but we waited until nearly daylight, and we got out of that haystack and went back and hid in a barn until we met that division about 5 days later. That was that patrol about 5 days later. So that was was very interesting.
What? Now, recently you have gone back.
Yes.
For 75th anniversary, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, this past December 75th anniversary.
What was that like?
And I represented, or at least I was the only man of my 17,000 men that comprised the 106th Infantry Division. That's artillery and signal corps and medical and everything. I was the only one that was back celebrating 75 years after the Battle of the Bulge. There were 19 total, 18 other people from other divisions, and we ended up at the National Cemetery in Luxembourg, and we got to shake hands. We were sitting in the front row, and Nancy Pelosi was one of the congressional people that came by us and shook hands. And I didn't recognize that name at first because I couldn't believe anybody from the United States would be there, but not her. I said, where are you from? And she kept saying, "I'm Nancy Pelosi." Well, I thought she was an Italian girl somewhere. But anyway, you know, so she got away from me before I could make any other comments. But I met the head of the armed services. I met the King and the Queen of England, and
oh, nice.
And Belgium. I'm not Belgium, and then I met the head of Luxembourg, and they took us, we prisoners of war, ex-prisoners of war, to his palace and served us hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and we were just treated royally. It was just a wonderful time. And I was there with, Mike took us over there with another Jesuit graduate and his wife. And they took us to all the different battle places where I was unaware of, but I had read about before that last day. And it was a great thing. Yeah, I loved it. And I'm fortunate I had good health and feel healthy today.
No doubt.
Sometimes I don't feel. I couldn't coach. I coached. It didn't make any difference. There was no problem with health. It was always 1,000%. Never got sick, you know.
But speaking of health, you're still active track and field wise. You're still the official at the Jesuit Sheaner relays. You're an official for several cross-country and track meets throughout the year. So, Herb, let's say this virus goes away pretty quickly. What do you have planned for this next track season?
Well, you know, I've already composed a letter to, we had 119 schools last year from Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, in Texas, high school teams, boys and girls. And I'd already let them know that we're ready to go, and that we have teams from all over Texas. They come to this meet, and some have called it the Texas Relays North. And so, but it does attract people from all over if they're looking for competition. And now it's a one-day meet. So in that regard, they can come, put in a good day's meet of activity and meet good competition, get themselves ready for district and region, Austin, state meets, and be home and be in their beds that same night.
Yeah,
and you in the area.
And in the last few years, you've actually incorporated an elite 2-mile race Friday night before.
Oh, that's correct. That's right. That gives a boy a chance to run. That's the only race on Friday,
right?
Friday night. So he could run the 2 miles then come back and Saturday afternoon and run the mile or the old 1600. So it's and Michael, my son, has been instrumental in getting about the 65 officials that we need to run the meet. Good officials, certified officials.
Oh, yeah.
And that means referees and people, starters, and good people. And so it's a dandy of well officiated. Everybody, that's good. You know, on a good track, good material, good officiating, and good timing. So everything works very well.
Do you have plans? Do you have plans this year to be at any other meets?
Well, I still will go if Mike asks me and they don't run me off generally. I sit in the golf cart and I get paid, but I may be a jury of appeals.
Okay.
So that's experience goes a long way when you're considering disqualifying somebody or some team. Experience goes a long way. The first time I was asked was a coach out in Garland, one of the schools, and I'd never refereed before, never even knew there was a track and field handbook to referee. And he said that, no, we're going to race and start over the long jump when we run it the next day. And I agreed with him. Well, the girl came up with the rule book and showed us that whatever had been participated in will stand, and then you continue on the next day. After that time, I read that. I learned where to order these books from Indianapolis, and I'd get one every year and go over it 2 or 3 times and read it. But along with that, the most important thing is experience, because it's that counts so much. Oh, by the way, we had a state meet, a UI TAPS state meet, the Catholic League state meet, and it was time, but I was coaching. When was that? In 1957. That was the year we had that great sprinter too. And I called my ex-coach at Texas University, and he was great friends of Mr. Kidd, and he was in charge of the UIL, and his son Kidd was running an 880 there on the track team with me, and I asked him if he would hold the TCIL meet down in Austin for us. And we can put you in with the B team, B, or some kind of a little smaller school division. And I didn't think that would be good and appropriate for us. But can you imagine TCIL running with the UIL? But back then it might have been possible, but not nowadays. And that's forbidden. But we end up running that first meet at SMU.
Gotcha.
And we won that meet, by the way. Jesuit Dallas, they did, and that was those have been interesting times.
I understand.
Sort of like the interesting at times, like getting free back home was interesting times in World War II, and going to the university. But my gosh, I'd grown up, and I could play, I could run and play football like the big boys. In the Army, I played with the center, all East center from Frank Barga, Temple, and the quarterback was from Dartmouth. I was the halfback. And in the championship game, I made the only touchdown, so we won. And here I was.
There you go.
Couldn't do anything in high school. I was just too small. Then from then on, I could compete with just like. And then I would get boys. I just loved the event of sport, just like you love the sports, and what you've done for people is remarkable. The athletes and for the coaches, we thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Well, Herb, I was going to say the same thing to you. You're an inaugural member of the Texas Track and Field Hall of Fame. I know you're in the Jesuit Hall of Fame for all you've done there. You've been an official, an honorary referee. Your impact, your legacy on our sport here in Texas and beyond, let's face it, it's immense. We also thank you, obviously, for your service to the nation. So I just want to say thank you for not only all of that, but as well giving up some time this afternoon to talk with me.
Well, 2 other things that come to my mind, if you don't mind me inserting that. Pellegrini was number 1 in the nation, our boy, when I had him. And then the three boys that threw in the 190s in the discus.
Right.
About 2 years ago, a boy from Houston area, from Hightower,
Gabe
he came
Oladipo.
up and threw the Texas high school record, 215 feet and 2 inches.
Yeah.
That's a credit to the meet, and of course we love those athletes. And I got to meet the mom and dad, and he's going to A&M, and that was good. And then our Schaefer boy that ran in '57, he broke Eddie Southern's, who's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Oh, Eddie.
He broke Eddie Southern's 200-yard dash over at Southwest recreational meet that year. And then also he ran with Sid Garton that on the relays that Sid was just initiated into the Texas Hall of Fame, and Sid and Mike, my sprinter, won gold trophies and clocks and all things every year for 3 years. And I have one on my desk, Kansas relays, first place trophies. Each of those Texas relays, Kansas, Drake relays. So I could go on. And Murphy graduated and won the conference championship up at the Naval Academy, and so we just had a heck of a time. And you're having a good time, I hope, because
always.
I appreciate you, and I like being around your coaching friends, and they like you. And we appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Herb. And we will talk with you soon. Tell your son hello back there. I hear him in the background.
Yeah.
Herb, you stay safe, and we will see you in person soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye.